Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session on ophthalmic publishing. So this is always a niche subject, and it's of particular interest to only those who are at the apex of academic publishing and who understand publishing at a level which is, not of particular interest to the larger audience here. So we've tried to put together, me as the editor of the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, I thought let's have an exclusive session where we will learn from some of the editors of the lead journals in ophthalmology. So we always do look up to American Journal of Ophthalmology, the British Journal of Ophthalmology, the Journal of Cataract and Refractive, or some of the most wanted journals we usually want to publish in. And as most of us are in general practice, do cater to cataract and general ophthalmology. I think these are the journals which really look at our submissions and of our manuscripts at a very critical angle here. So here we are with the team from Indian Journal of Ophthalmology interacting with some of these lead journals editors, and I really thank them for taking out the time to fly over to India from various parts of the world. And I hope you will all learn as much as we are looking forward to learn from them. Thank you for being with us here. So this is the International Guild of Editors, the trends and perspectives on ophthalmic publishing here. So we have with us distinguished speakers who really do not need any introduction here. So the session will comprise of Professor Richard Parrish's talk to us on what the American Journal of Ophthalmology wants to publish and what really drives the peer review process here. Dr. Shobha will probably be joining us a little late. Her flight probably landed later. I would then talk to you on editorial strategies for successful journal publishing. Dr. Thomas Conan will shortly join us, I hope so, and his talk is on what JCRS wants us to do when we are submitting manuscripts and how do we get it published there. Dr. Frank Larkin is also due to join us on decision-based editor handling of research at the British Journal of Ophthalmology. So before we move on to the talks, a quick introduction by the distinguished panel who is here with us and who will take the discussion thread forward and would like to clarify some of their common faced concern when they are facing the editorial process of reviewing and editing their manuscripts here. I have with me Professor Dr. Rohan Chawla, who's leading the Retina and Uvea services at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi here. Has a vast experience in publishing with over 280 publications to his credit here. Shweta is on another session. She heads the cornea department at cornea and ocular surface rather at the Shankar Netralia. And again, a person with vast clinical and publishing experience in her field. She would also join us shortly here. Professor Vinay Gupta, again an internationally renowned figure in the glaucoma services. His work in congenital glaucoma is commendable, and he also heads the glaucoma services at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and he'll be also leading the thread of discussions in ophthalmic publishing. Due to join us shortly is Professor Radhika Tandon, who has just taken over the anvil as the first women chief of the ophthalmic department of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. And she has multiple credits to her portfolio on, and she will again join us for the discussions here. I will now hand over the podium to Professor Richard Parrish and invite him to talk to us on his editorial experiences. Over to you, Dr. Parrish.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers of the session, specifically those representatives and leaders in the All India Ophthalmological Society that have made this possible. I have already learned much in just chatting with you before the meeting and hope to continue to be a student, not a teacher, for the rest of the meeting. My focus will be developing an understanding of what the American Journal of Ophthalmology wants to publish and focus on what drives the peer review process. These are the goals: to describe the publication goals of the American Journal of Ophthalmology to tell you what being an author means, not to me, but to the International Council of Medical Journal Editors. I would like to describe an issue that is important in all peer-reviewed publications, and that is defining what is a conflict of interest. I will then compare and contrast the various formats for publication in the AJO. They include editorials, perspectives, original full-length scientific articles, and systematic reviews, and discuss very briefly the principles and mechanics of the AJO review process. I want you all to know that the American Journal of Ophthalmology is not an American Journal of Ophthalmology. I've written an editorial on this subject focusing on our internationality, and our editorial board reflects my perspective that we are one world, one people, and we have one goal for vision. We have editorial board members from Italy, the UK, Brazil, Canada, Costa Rica, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, Germany, Finland, Israel, Poland, France, India, Singapore, and the People's Republic of China in Hong Kong. It wasn't until I was preparing this lecture that I realized that we have 5 editorial board members, although they are not living in India, all claim proudly Indian ancestries: Dr. Chablani, Dr. Ramalu, Dr. Janji, Dr. Garb, and Dr. Patel. In my opinion, we are all unified to improve vision quality of life by acquiring new knowledge and using it to improve eye care everywhere in the world. Well, this is what the American Journal of Ophthalmology is about. And if you go to www.ajo.com, you will find an explicit description of the AJO. And one word keeps popping up, and that is clinical. Manuscripts dedicated to ophthalmologists and visual science specialists describing clinical investigations, clinical observations, clinically relevant laboratory investigations. I wrote an editorial, what the American Journal of Ophthalmology wants to publish, and if you would like to receive a PDF of that, just email me and I would be happy to send that to you, as well as the other editorial that the American Journal of Ophthalmology is not an American Journal of Ophthalmology. We publish full-length scientific articles, perspectives, editorials, and correspondences. These are really commentaries on published articles, systematic reviews, and meta-analyses, and these are discussed in detail when you go to www.ajo.com. We no longer publish brief reports and case reports. However, they are published in a separate journal that bears the title American Journal of Ophthalmology Case Reports, and Dr. Gupta is a member of that editorial board with Dr. Jay Stewart. We have a new session entitled Illustrations and Insights, which are examples of outstanding videos and visual reports that are edited by Dr. Patel. Well, who is an author anyway? And it's not what I claim it to be. It is clearly defined by the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, and there are 4 criteria for being an author. You have to substantially contribute to the conception or the design of the work, or acquisition, analysis, interpretation of the data, and you have to draft the work and revise it critically, and you must give final approval of the version to be published, and you must be accountable for all of the aspects that are appropriately related to the accuracy and integrity of the work. And if there's an area that you are not responsible for, then you should be able to identify those co-authors, perhaps those with biostatistical or epidemiologic expertise, so that questions could be referred to them. Well, what is a conflict of interest? And this again is described in great detail in a fact sheet by Elsevier, the publication center of the AJO, as well as at the WWW-ICMJE. And it essentially is any financial or personal interest or belief that could affect the objectivity or inappropriately influence the decision of an editor in determining whether a journal should be published or not. Frankly, if you cannot judge if you have a conflict, then you should declare any intellectual or personal issue and allow the reader of your paper to be the judge whether you have a conflict or not. I am frequently faced with my own conflict of interest. Many members of my faculty at the University of Miami or Baskin-Palmer Eye Institute will submit their work, and hopefully their very best work, to the American Journal of Ophthalmology. When I receive that, I forward this to one of my associate editors and state that it's coming from a member of my own department. I can have nothing further to do with the decision-making process. Do with this as you see fit, and essentially whatever they decide, whether it is published or reject, is one that I will abide by. The worst thing would be for readers to think that if you were on the faculty, you had an easy time getting published in the AJO. So, because we have many different types of publications, I would like to focus on, I think, the one which has the greatest interest and impact, and that is the full-length original scientific article. In summary, I ask of every submission, is it new and is it true? So these are the 7 criteria that I have in mind. Do you address a condition that affects the visual system or vision-related quality of life? Do you provide a better understanding of the pathophysiology? Is your information novel, or does it improve our diagnostic ability? Does your information contribute to our therapeutic decision-making? That is, tell us how we can do a better job caring for patients. Or do you provide a better understanding of how we judge or measure treatment outcomes? Do you describe how to improve eye care, not just for individual patients, but for groups of patients or populations? And do you provide information that could more effectively spend the resources on how to improve eye care or visual health? It need not be all of those, but I think at least one of them must be clearly answered so the reader understands the importance of your work. So, you've published your article, you think it meets the criteria that are set forward. Is it new? Is it true? Can you answer yes to these questions? 1, is the information novel, or does it provide important confirmatory information on a controversial topic? 2, do you have a clearly stated reason for doing the study? 3, and this is so important with gigantic databases, did you have a testable hypothesis before you did the study? I cannot help but think now with the availability of enormous databases, it looks like a fishing expedition with all of this data and all of this genetic information. Let's think if there's some association without there being a plausible, biologically driven hypothesis. In the United States, did an IRB, or Institutional Review Board, approve the investigation before it started, known as an ethics committee in many portions of the world? Did the authors define what was a measurable outcome before the investigation started? Too often I have the feeling people collect data and then they look and see if the p-value was, less than 0.05 and say, well, it's statistically significant. But it wasn't clear that there was any idea what was a meaningful clinical difference before the study was done. Was there a sample size calculation? Was the sample that you had sufficient to support the conclusion? And naturally, did the methodology support the conclusion? How was treatment assigned? Was it random? And did different groups have different lengths of follow-up? All of these are important criteria in judging the scientific value of a report. When you read the guide for authors at AJO, it's very clearly how it should be presented. And at times I wonder if the authors actually read them. There is a prescribed format for all of the major journals, and they're all a bit different. Most of them have a structured abstract with a purpose, design, methods, result, and conclusions. And at least for the American Journal, we follow the American Medical Association Manual of Style 11th edition for what constitutes how to list the references. It's a small point, but for uniformity, they should be followed. So you've written your paper, you're going to send it off, and you're almost ready to hit send. I would suggest before you press the button send, you ask your most trusted, most knowledgeable, and constructively critical associate to read the manuscript. And when I've done that and someone sends back a note, "Oh, that was very good, send," I know they didn't read it. I ask them to submit a written review and to make extensive changes with a digital copy and the tracker mode turned on. You learn to be very accepting of criticism in order to improve your work. If you're writing in a language other than English, then asking an experienced English language medical writer to review the grammar and sentence is always important. I say that because I frequently make errors as a Native American English language speaker. I always read my entire manuscript out loud. I want to hear what I have written, and I frequently realize how poorly I have written and how I have failed to communicate what I really wanted to say. In other words, I get in my own way of being clear. Use simple sentences and try to avoid putting too many thoughts in one paragraph. In English, as in I think all Romance languages, there are active verbs, there are passive constructions, and we are taught to always use active verbs when possible and to avoid transitive verbs simply as say using the word there is or is. Well, last slide. Do not interpret rejection of your manuscript as a rejection of you. Before I became the editor-in-chief of AJO, my last two submissions to the AJO were rejected. And one of them had been rejected by Ophthalmology, JAMA Ophthalmology, British Journal of Ophthalmology, and the American Journal of Ophthalmology before it was finally published in OSLI Retina. I still firmly believe that it is the most complete description of the long-term vitreoretinal complications of glaucoma drainage implant surgery. That is my opinion. A second manuscript that actually was the basis for a completed FDA clinical trial was rejected and finally published in the Journal of Ophthalmology. I would tell every author to remember that you know what is important, even if the reviewers do not fully accept your opinion, and do not let their rejection stand in your way of getting a work published. As we say in this country, in America, that cream always rises to the top. I would wish you good luck as you proceed with your research. A late, great American basketball coach who died of complications of cancer shortly before his death, when talking about his own struggle with cancer, so passionately said, "Never give up, never ever give up." Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parrish. I think it was a good insight into how you would approach a manuscript when you're reviewing it. What are the basics questions you also need to ask yourself when you're looking at every submission which has reached your desk? I think it's also important for the authors that they also have a similar checklist on their minds when they are preparing their manuscript. So it makes it easier for them to enhance the way they write their manuscripts, And it also becomes easier for us to look for those answers, for those key questions which we are looking at when we are thinking about making a decision of whether to move this further from the main editorial desk into the desks of associate editors, and then they to move it into the desks of their reviewers. So I think that was a very good insight into what would be the key points which you would look for look in every manuscript when you want to move it further into the reviewing process here. I would invite my panel to put forward. Yeah, before that, I think, yes, Dr. Raj.
Yeah.
Yeah, please
thank
do
you.
introduce yourself as well. And
Yeah, I'm Dr. Raja Narayanan. I'm a retina surgeon from LV Prasada Institute.
can we have the mic up, sound up, please,
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
mic? Yeah.
I hope I'm audible now.
You
Thank
are,
you so
yes.
much for the kind of personalized talk that Parish has given us. I feel very fortunate. One of the common problems that we all face is the different style or format for different journals, and that can sometimes feel so it takes so much time that you know it's my question with concerning to that is, would it help to email the editor-in-chief for an inquiry that whether you would be interested in sending out a manuscript for review before we format, and that takes a lot of time. So does that help to ask an editor-in-chief before it's sent out for review?
Your question, let's see. There we go. Your question is important, and just to review for those who might not have heard, is it because it is so much effort to prepare a paper and to format it based on each journal's criteria, is it worth sending a letter to the editor-in-chief asking them to essentially pre-review the topic? I received this question many times. It has been the tradition of the American Journal of Ophthalmology not to pre-review. And you say, well, why not? I know this will be hard for some members to believe, but today I reviewed the 823rd submission, calendar year 2025. We will have over 3,000, well, right now it's on track about 2,800 submissions. And although it's a great idea, I simply don't have the bandwidth or the time. When I need to make a decision, as was just mentioned, whether to send it on to one of the associate editors who will then send it on to two of the reviewers. Again, if you focus on the editorial, what the American Journal of Ophthalmology wants to publish, I think it's pretty clear whether you think it will meet those criteria. I can't guarantee it will be reviewed, but I would strongly suggest reviewing that. And again, I'd be happy to send a PDF of that editorial to anyone who likes to see it.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Rohit.
I'm Dr. Rohit, and I just wanted to ask you that most of our papers we write from our team has a mix of the biology and the clinics. And many times, for example, wound healing in cornea and also some of the retinal stuff. So many times we have received that this is not suitable for this kind of a journal and probably submit. Is that something which I should keep in mind, that, see, most of the biology, the translational ones do not have, it's more of strong hypothesis, and there are a lot of experiments which give some kind of a proof, and it's very difficult to have a concrete conclusion that this, like you said, the transitive verbs like this and it. So do you think that these kind of papers should not be something which is on the top of our list when we submit? Thank you, and thank you for a great talk.
Thank you. The question is, when there's a mixture of biology and clinical information, how do you judge whether it's a good fit for the journal? And I don't have an easy answer for that. There are so many excellent peer-reviewed journals. There is now TVST, Transitional Visual Science and Technology, which is an excellent journal as well. It's part of the ARVO family of publications. I think it still gets back to, and it's blurred, it's pretty clear all of the three major English language journals based in the United States anyway, that's JAMA Ophthalmology, Ophthalmology, and AJO, are all dying to receive the latest randomized clinical trial which will definitively show a result. If we only published randomized clinical trials, there might be one journal every 3 years. I mean, there's just not a lot of that kind of information. And I have learned to depend on my editorial board. As you see, I have editorial board members from across the world. And if there's something that comes in on retina, for example, and it deals with some aspect of macular degeneration or treatment, we have the good fortune of having Dr. Tablani, Dr. Stewart, Dr. Philip Rosenfeld. If we have something that deals with uveitis, we have Dr. Janet Davis, Dr. Nita Sen, Dr. Lucia Sobrin, and the list goes on and on. So as an editor-in-chief, I think the single most important thing I can do is to assure that the members of the board are thoughtful, constructive, and honest in their opinions. So I'm afraid I've managed to avoid answering the question other than to say I trust my members of the board to help know what combination of basic science or biology and clinical results are justifying publication.
Dr. Parrish, we do have a lot of articles which are available on preprint now, online. And I do see an increasing trend of authors wanting to have their articles on preprint before they would probably submit it for peer-reviewed journals here. What is your take on that, and would you really consider the article further if you have something which is on preprint, which is being submitted? Because in IJO, we as a policy do not encourage those which are on preprint, which are already available for the audience to read. We do have a policy on that. What is your take on this?
The question is on preprint, so something might be available at an open access site. I think at this point we now go from science, at least in the United States, to a legal definition. Elsevier is the publisher of the American Journal of Ophthalmology as well as Ophthalmology. And I know there are strict, enforceable international legal rules. I would have no problem with that, but I know that the publishers jealously guard what is copyright protected and not. I mean, this other issue has come up in the past. People would go to a meeting like this, listen to a presentation on a brand new concept, run back and publish it in a non-peer-reviewed journal, and there was a great deal of conflict as a speaker. You know, did you contribute to violation of a copyright? This was at the American Academy, because the American Academy has the first right of refusal for anything printed or presented either at the podium or poster. So I guess at this point it is still, my understanding, forbidden by Elsevier.
I have one question regarding being on the editorial board. I mean, how easy or difficult do you find to find reviewers? Because over the years we've been having a great struggle just to find reviewers. Sometimes they're very good papers and you don't get reviewers for them. So how do you manage this?
This is one of the most important questions that I face. There are so many very, very specific topics where only a handful of people really know the information, whether it's some aspect of ocular surface or trabecular meshwork biology or imaging of the retina. And it's hard, once you get outside of a very small circle of individuals, to find an expert. And unfortunately, and this has happened to me with one of my own members of my faculty in Miami, is this individual is a world-class clinician scientist. And I've asked this individual to join the editorial board numerous times, but they have declined. You know, I'm very busy. But yet, when it comes time for them to send an article, they send it to the AIO. Absolutely. And I said, come on, we're spending many hours reviewing your work, which is excellent. Couldn't you think about helping us review and be fair? And it's a struggle, as you all know, although I'm provided a modest honorarium for being the editor-in-chief. It's not a full-time job. Every reviewer who takes time away from their clinical practice, from their own research, from helping members teaching in their society or in their medical school, it costs them something, and it's so unfair. I mean, I am most grateful to all of the members of the editorial board. I was able to have silk ties, and they're made in India that have the AJO, and I gave that to the men, and I have a scarf, a silk scarf, again made in India for the women who are members of the board. But it's not enough.
No, it's not enough, yeah. I think that's a constant concern which all of us are facing here, and it is indeed, I do concur with you, the same thoughts which I had. I have all the leading institutes, the academic institutes from India who contribute a lot in terms of their submissions to Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, but I have the same problem when I do approach them to review some papers. As you see, we know that there are only a specific few who are academically probably sound in terms of their knowledge in addressing the concerns of certain submissions, and it is still unfortunate, but we would probably still keep sending out our requests and asking us to join them as reviewers to our team here.
So I think I found one small trick. So when in my institute people come to me and ask me, you know, it's been a long time that we have submitted in the journal and we haven't heard from them, then I put forth the question, are you willing to review an article? Can I send you one? And if they say yes, then I tell them, oh yeah, then I'm sure you will get yours soon. So that's one trick that I'm trying to apply. Well, I have a question for you, Dr. Parrish. In your journal, how do you keep a balance between the scientific or the basic research and the clinical articles that come? Is there a way in which you are trying to balance it out? Because each requires the other.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you can't have good science or you can't have a clinically important concept that improves patient care or our diagnostic ability unless it's based on good science. And what is that balance? And again, I trust the editorial board members to make that decision. We, as you know, in the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and hopefully it will continue as it has been in the past, there are these very basic phase 1 studies, phase 2, phase 3, and the ones that finally lead to approval of a drug. Traditionally, it's only been the phase 3 studies, the ones that lead to final drug or device approval that get published. I have spoken to several individuals and said, well, listen, if you have a phase 2 trial that shows there's enough information to lead to phase 3, I will take a gamble. I will publish your phase 2 with the understanding if you do go forward with a randomized clinical trial authorized by the FDA, I would hope and anticipate you would give us that first right of refusal. And so again, some of the very, very basic science work, which is terribly important, that gives us some understanding of a disease process, but the connection between that and ultimate treatment is too far away. I think investigative ophthalmology, visual science, Journal of Vision, and TVST are all options. It's not, again, it's not that they're not of value, it's do they fit in with my notion of how it improves clinical care. And that's a very nuanced, highly subjective decision. And frankly, we always don't get it right. I must tell you, and I think if he were here, he would let me know it as well, arguably one of the most important advances in the treatment of neovascular age-related macular degeneration is the use of anti-VEGF treatment. And the first individual that I'm aware of who sent a publication or an article for review was Dr. Rosenfeld from my own institution. He reminds me constantly that was sent to the American Journal of Ophthalmology where it was rejected. So we all make mistakes. We don't have perfect vision. And, you know, obviously he did not say, oh, I guess it's of no value, let me stop. As a result of his persistence, it's changed the life, I think, of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people with what would otherwise be a blinding condition across the world.
Dr. Rohan. Yeah.
Very nice talk, Dr. Richard. You have nicely outlined what all articles you would like for submission to American Journal. So there's a recent trend here that people have now started doing online surveys and sort of making articles based on that. So I just wanted to ask you, what is your opinion regarding that?
Yeah. This is a great question, and that is, what are the value of survey-type publications? And I must admit, I have my name associated with several of them. There was a survey, and I think it's been in three different generations, and it was an inquiry originally of the Japanese Glaucoma Society, the American Glaucoma Society, and this was maybe 15 or 20 years ago, on the use of antimetabolites like 5-fluorouracil or mitomycin. And, you know, it was published, and that we've done some additional ones. The problem in almost every survey is poor survey response rate. If you're going to publish something that is presumably reflective of a society, you want to do the All India Academy use of whatever, anti-VEGF in neovascular AMD, and I'm not sure how many thousand members of your society, but I'm sure many. And if you have a response rate of 20 or 25%, it becomes very difficult to believe that that information would be generalizable to the whole group. So the very weak spot of literally every survey is a poor response rate, because at the end of the day, you don't know whether people who really like it respond or really hate it and they don't respond. And it's one of the main problems.
Yeah, actually recently we had a similar survey from Vitreoretinal Society of India, which has thousands of members, but you're right, the response rate was about 350 or 400 odd members. So I also said that the response rate is low, so probably we would not like to accept that.
Yeah. It's also hard to know how to go forward with that information, you know. Are you trying to sell the people who didn't respond, they don't know what they're doing? No, of course not. This is simply what it reflects the practice.
Yeah. So I think we have both Dr. Thomas Conan, no, he's Dr. Frank Larkin, and Professor Radhika Tandon, who's also joining us. Please join us on the dais, ma'am.
So, Dr. Parrish, I had another question about the AI devices or the apps that are being used now. A lot of authors have been taking the help of the AI devices. Till language correction probably, or the grammatical aspect, I think everybody is okay with it. But is there any other way in which the AGO has been working to pick up?
Yeah, the question is now on the ubiquitous appearance of AI, and where is the line?
Exactly.
Where is, you know, running a spell check, because even in English I make grammatical errors and spelling errors all the time. I don't think anyone would, I mean, we've had spell checks forever, so that's not important. You know, trying to rewrite something using AI, at what point is it no longer yours? And this is very blurred. There was an editorial, I think, that has been published by Elsevier on that. Generally speaking, the less it's used, the better. Because I'm still not sure. Sometimes I think the only thing that's artificial about intelligence is that it is artificial.
I think Dr. Radhika has a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering that over time we will have to change the paradigm. So if these AI language tools can improve efficiency and give a different dimension, so can we be a little bit flexible and allow the person to declare? So it may not be the original work that the device or sort of the tool has created, but it could assist, you know, in organizing things and, you know, putting things in a better way. So can we think about in future having a little bit of flexibility and then having some rules that you declare that you have used it for ABC?
Yeah, the point it's made, it's excellent. You know, can we use AI to improve the work that we've done? Although it would be a real nuisance, I think it would be great to say, send me your publication pre-AI, send me your publication post-AI, and, you know, if a paragraph is rearranged or thoughts are turned around so that it's more clear, I have no problem. But if it changes fundamentally the concept or the approach, I think we need to be flexible. This is the real world, I mean, and there isn't anything that's developing in AI that has been untouched by AI going forward.
Thank you.
I think we have Dr. Frank Larkin also join us. And I think this is a question for both Dr. Larkin and Dr. Parrish. What do you use as strategies to detect the amount of AI the authors use in their manuscripts, apart from language correction? Now, I do find Indian Journal of Ophthalmology has a lot of submissions coming from non-English speaking nations such as China. I think you must also be facing the same. And sometimes when we read those manuscripts, we know that they have been manicured using artificial intelligence. And I am at a loss to really see how I can incorporate an AI detecting software. So what would you advise us, and how would you think we can take this problem further?
I think at the end of the day, if something doesn't have sufficient scientific merit or structure, all the amount of AI in the world is not going to turn something that is not of high quality into high quality. So I must admit, I have not found it to be a problem, because the good science will bleed through. It either is or is not. And you can only polish, you know, a rock will never be a diamond no matter how many times you try to polish it.
I would absolutely agree with that. The authors submitting to our journal, which is published by British Medical Journal, they fill in a declaration, and there are other subsidiary declarations at the time of submission, but it doesn't matter at all at the editorial level, exactly as Dr. Parrish has said, because if it's rubbish, it doesn't matter if it's rubbish generated by AI or by the authors. And the key thing for the editor is to decide what's good enough, and then go into the detail about why it's good or why it might be made better and how it might be made acceptable for publication. So the declaration from the authors is their business, but we've got to go deeper than that.
I have a question, if I may ask. There's another challenge that we're facing as authors nowadays, that over the last 2-3 years there has been open source or open access publications, and we are still using the metric of citation as our benchmark for whether the paper is good or not. And sometimes these open access journals, somehow they have a much higher, the journal will have a much higher index factor, impact factor. So do we need to redefine keeping this concept? Because now we're a little confused as to which journal would be considered a better kind of a higher ranking journal, because sometimes the higher ranking journal then is open access, and then it's extremely expensive, like it's prohibitively expensive, sometimes even over $1,000. So that's the only thing we're wondering, that do we need to rethink as to how we rank the journals, or put it as which is better than the other? Is there any new metric that we can think of?
I don't think that open access journals in ophthalmology have very high impact factors. There are obviously several of them, and that number will, I'm certain, grow. But the journals such as the journal edited by Dr. Parrish, myself, JAMA Ophthalmology, these are journals which publish open access on payment. But the fully open access journals, they've got low impact factors as things stand.
Changing now, it's changing.
Well, it's not.
That's the trouble.
The open access, in fact, have significantly high impact factor than the journals like the IOVS, if you take for example, has a significantly high impact factor. They all go for double-digit numbers. Yeah.
But that's not open access only, is it?
I think so. It's open access. If I might be wrong, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I think it's a little confusing. Impact factor is, I believe, a proprietary metric owned by Thomson Reuters, and it refers to if you have published an article, how many times that article was quoted in a peer-reviewed journal, not in an open access journal, I believe. And so everybody is trying to publish and have someone pick it up and have it cited in that regard. But I think that's almost always limited to those peer-reviewed journals that Dr. Martin just mentioned.
So I think we'll move on to the next talk, and we're waiting to hear Dr. Frank Larkin talk to us on decision-making editorial handling of research at the British Journal of Ophthalmology. Over to you, Dr. Larkin.
I'm very pleased to speak at this session, as I did 2 years ago, I think in Kuala Lumpur, and there was a tremendous session on journal publication. My journal is, as I said a few minutes ago, published by British Medical Journal. We've got the reason I've come to India in particular is that we get lots and lots of submissions from Indian authors. These are just statistics from my own journal. And we have a low acceptance rate of articles from Indian authors. And I think I really would like to do something about this. Some of it is changeable, is achievable, and some may not be. These, just for the interest of those of you working here in India, these are the institutions in India that have published in the British Journal of Ophthalmology 2020 to 2024, led by the LV Prasad Eye Institute, and you can read the names of the other distinguished institutions there. So these are very fine institutions, and we've seen some tremendous work coming from authors in these institutions. We have quite a wide reach, best of all in the United States, no, not surprisingly, but India is number 2 in page views for our journal in the world, reflecting its great size and also its great interest in international ophthalmology. Now, this really is what I think you have been asking me to speak about, is the perspective of the editor and editorial decision makers. And we have really 3 categories of decision making. The first is, of course, screening the manuscripts on arrival on submission. And I've just listed there the questions which I want to address. The big one is, should we review this paper? In other words, should we take that submission to a higher level and get it peer reviewed by those on our editorial board, and more particularly peer reviewers around the world? So the subsidiary questions are in black. Is this work in scope for the journal? That's almost always yes. Is it research? It might seem silly to even ask that question, but some of what's submitted is not research, and that will be immediately rejected at our journal. Important question number 3, does it claim to report sufficiently original, relevant information to warrant the more detailed reviewer assessment? And finally, relevant policies. What that means is the essential policy, the relevant policy fulfilled. For example, in a clinical trial, has there been a consort diagram completed and submitted with the manuscript? And similar additional diagrams of that kind. So that's screening, and should we review this? Now, moving on to the next, authors need to know that reviewers advise, but they don't decide. I will sometimes get reviews back from distinguished reviewers who will have made decisions, often unanimously. Sometimes one says accept, one says reject, and as an editor and as a section editor on our editorial board, we've got to make a decision. So we will not always go with the peer review consensus. But the key questions you will see there are methods, originality, relevance, and are there any what we call fatal flaws? Is there any single limitation in that published paper which means it is unacceptable and must be rejected? As editor, I want to know, because I'm a corneal and external diseases specialist, I know very little about cutting-edge retina, glaucoma, neuro-ophthalmology, etc. So I need to know, is it novel from experts in that field? I need to know, Is there bias, or is there a significant risk of bias? And most importantly, what I want to know from reviewers and from section editors is, will this change clinical practice? Because those are the papers that every journal editor wants to attract and wants to publish. You can put it another way. I like this, RIOT, R-I-O-T, relevant, important, original, and trustworthy. And one of the things that you see as an editor, and you have to make a decision, is a manuscript coming in which is not really at the beginning of a new body of research and a new body of work, and is largely confirmatory of earlier published work. And on those manuscripts, you've got to choose carefully. And of course, what we all really do want is to publish work which is at the forefront and ideally at the beginning of a new area, moving point in ophthalmology. Now, I won't go through this big long list in detail, but these are the questions that as an editor, I want answered by reviewers, and my section editors will want this answered by reviewers. And that is a more detailed version of the slide I showed you just a moment ago. Now, the second decision-focused question is following review. What are the modifiable weaknesses, and does the journal want to publish this work? So this is an assessment of the strengths and limitations that have been identified by peer reviewers. I want to know, is enhanced scrutiny needed? For example, do we need to get professional statistician assessment of the statistics in a paper? This is really important for us in big trials. It's less important for us in less comprehensive statistical analyses. The editor's view, the section editor's view, and my own view, what would the authors need to do for us to publish it? So it's come back with reviews, and we need to decide in the communication to the authors what they've got to do. We'll pass on the reviewer comments. We might add additional comments. For example, more emphasis please on the limitations of the paper, things of this kind. So that's the second kind of category of questions. And this is the third. When the paper comes back following revision. And the question here for us is, can we accept this? Have the critical issues identified at peer review been identified? Is it possible for them to be identified? And sometimes it's not. Have the basic standards been met? That obviously is a key. That question must be addressed. Is further enhanced scrutiny needed? Do we need to get further statistical advice? Is there disagreement on which we need to get expert further advice? Perhaps a third review where we have two peer reviews. Can the transparency in communication be improved and used further? So that in brief is the decision focus at the editor level that we use in the journal. Screening, review, and the assessment of the revisions. Just before I finish, I just want to flag this up. India is a wonderful country producing wonderful research on eye infection. I think it's the finest area of research that I know of taking place in India, and we're in our own journal particularly interested in this, and we're publishing a special topic edition in early 2026, which I hope will feature much work from the excellent Indian researchers that are active in this field. And thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Larkin. I think it was a very beautiful sum up of the way you deal with the articles. I have a question for you. How do you decide about commentary for a particular article, and is it always invited, or?
Commentaries are, we'll usually commission commentaries, first of all, if at an editor level we think work is important and we want to highlight it. The second reason why we will commission commentaries is if the reviewer or reviewers suggest this. And sometimes you can read the reviews as an editor, and you can see that they're really interested in the work, and they're pointing to importance and this kind of. So at that stage, quite often I will approach one of the reviewers or the section editor and say, would you please consider doing a commentary? But it's very subjective. Yeah.
I have a question. You showed that the response rate from India is very poor with regard to acceptance in the BJO. So any particular reason that you have, tried to find out why compared to China or many other countries where is it the language, or is it just the concepts that are coming from India which are not really suitable for
It's
the
a mixture of things. It's not so much language, I would say. I think it's quality. I think it's standards. I think trial design is improved all over the world, and maybe India is not, I'm being very general here, maybe India is not right up there in terms of that area. I think, but largely quality rather than and that may also reflect a responsibility of senior authors, really, to polish the work better and to before submission. I suspect that's one of the reasons. Yeah.
Maybe I can just add on to that. I think India is also now probably improving its standards of Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, and our authors do find publishing with the IGO is probably easier for them, because I know a lot of authors from India cannot write to the editorial board or the chief editor directly if their article faces concerns. But I have a lot of queries coming into my inboxes directly, both my emails and my personal social media, querying me about why their articles are not being moved further. So I also probably feel that the acceptance for Indian authors to choose Indian Journal of Ophthalmology as their primary submitting podium or the portal is probably on the increase as well. But yes, I think I've published my keratomalaysia and keratoplasty in keratomalaysia and British Journal of Ophthalmology when I was a resident under Professor Radhika Tandon, and it gave me immense thrill to have a paper in the BJO, and that still holds good for many of us here.
Very nice talk on decision making, which is something which really we all of us do daily. So partly I think you've answered what I'm going to ask, but it's still something which bothers us. So sometimes you have an article which goes against a little conventional thought. It may not be perfect, but it has some relevance. You send it to two good reviewers, you think they are the good reviewers, and one of them gives very good comments and the other one totally gives opposite comments. So then how do you go about it?
Well, that's really interesting. But as an editor, you've got to have broad shoulders. I always say that. You've got to be prepared to take a chance. You've got to back people when you think they're worth backing. It's like life. You can get a third review, but I think when you get very, very opposite opinions, and they're from people with sufficient experience in the field and sufficient importance, it does happen, and it happens quite regularly. But it's very interesting. I like those decisions. I find it interesting. And I'll often go back directly to the reviewer and say, look, your view that you've given us, for which we're extremely grateful, is diametrically opposite to another peer reviewer. And it's quite interesting. You've got to make it a judgment. And look, we get it wrong sometimes. But I think what journals, one of their most important functions is to generate discussion. You can't just close things down because there isn't unanimity on the superb quality. And much wonderful research has arisen from voices that are not, consensus, and we've got to encourage that. But being an editor, you've got to have a bit of courage, I think, and I've been doing it for 4 years now. Dr. Parrish, I don't know how long you've been doing it, but it's
Yeah,
you learn.
I agree with Dr. Larkin very much. We encourage what is called post-publication peer review. It's a little different in the AJO. I have a group of about 40 editorial board members, all, I think, world-class experts in their area. If I sent, or in the old days, would send a submission to Dr. Harry Flynn from my own institution, who was a world-class expert in endophthalmitis. And if he looked at it, he didn't need 3 people to tell him that it wasn't worth a review. So I've come to trust enormously on the editorial board members, who will then, in turn, if they think it's worthy, send it out to 2 or 3, and then it comes back. At the end of the day, if it's published, there still may be controversy, as Dr. Larkin mentioned. And at this point, we encourage correspondence. That's not a letter to the editor, but really a correspondence with specific questions about a published article. There was a time when we would publish any of those, but it turns out some people were using that opportunity to beef up their CV. Unbelievably, it never occurred to me. So now when a correspondence comes back on a published article, I will send it back to the editorial board member, ask them to peer review the correspondence. If they said, yes, this is an important point, the authors should address this, then I then send a letter to the authors of the original publication who will respond. If the correspondence reads, no, they're just trying to promote their own idea and they almost didn't consider what was written in the publication, it would be rejected. But I agree, post-publication peer review is one of the strengths, and it's frankly very difficult to generate correspondence from my standpoint.
I think, yes, Dr. Parrish, I agree with you that people do. There is a trend to use letter to editors and correspondence for more of personal benefits rather than really looking at it as a post-publication peer review process, or probably adding on to what the article is already telling the audience about it. And yes, we also follow the similar policy of getting those peer reviewed again, at least by our associate editors and by our reviewers, before we do consider all the letter to editors, and we do have quite a significant number of them, and the rejections on them do tend to be much higher as well with us as well. Yeah. Yes. Anything else?
Yeah, another challenge we're facing in India now is that the Medical Council of India, the National Medical Commission, has mandated that every person who's in teaching in a medical college has to have a certain number of peer-reviewed indexed publications, which the numbers are so huge, plus we have every person who is doing MD ophthalmology or MS ophthalmology does a thesis as part, and there again is a large number of people. So maybe that's another challenge that we're facing. So from that point of view, the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology has given one kind of a platform, but maybe we could consider having a journal such as Postgraduate Ophthalmology, which could be a supplement. I don't know how technically easy it is. So it's understood that it doesn't have maybe the same element of, say, novelty, but it could be a different angle of looking at a disease from the local perspective. So something to encourage this postgraduate ophthalmology so that they have a platform where they can publish their thesis, obviously not compromising the principles of publication, but recognizing that after all this work has been gone through the ethics committee, and that information should be available for somebody else to look at if they are planning a study further on. So even maybe just a listing of the thesis somewhere, or with this is the main conclusion, so some kind of a supplement or some kind of a appendix. Maybe you will not be able to do it, but maybe Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, because it's a local issue. I don't think any other country mandates this kind of a requirement of its academic professionals.
May be wrong, and if there's anybody here from China, I stand corrected, but as far as I know, in China, a similar instruction has been handed down, and there is pressure on young Chinese researchers to have a certain 1 or 2 published papers, and the Chinese Journal of Ophthalmology, I don't think that's the correct name, but they are publishing an English language translation of their own journal, and they've approached the British Medical Journal about cooperating. But I think the institutional pressure from the Indian Medical Council, that's very interesting. I think it's a very good idea. But I think international ophthalmology journals, which base ourselves on research, so the Indian Journal, the American Journal, the British Journal, and equivalent journals elsewhere, we will probably want to stay above that level, exactly as you say. But I think it's a very good instruction and a very good initiative.
I think just touching upon that again, yes, India has one of the largest number of ophthalmic institutions which train residents in ophthalmology, and the pressure to take forward their thesis work into final publications is significant in when I do look at my submissions here. But that said and done, I think I have to look at it with a fine balance between how much of it is really acceptable as a publishable manuscript, what is the novelty and what is really required, and we do not want duplications of work, or we do not want the repeat messages which is going in. So my call out to all those mentors who are guiding their research students as part of their for their master's degree, probably enhance the way they look at their research processes, and I think it is challenging, but then it's fun working with a challenge and really helping to increase the standard and quality of research which is being done, rather making it just repetitions of research which already exists. So that's one request which I would, on behalf of my team, put forward to all those who are doing thesis work for their master's degree, which would look at work being given to their students which is worth being translated into a publication that is befitting a peer-reviewed journal here. We do have non-peer-reviewed or we do have non-indexed journals which are being peer-reviewed in India. Some of the state journals are really very good here, and then probably I do recommend them to take them into those journals if I find it is not up to the quality and standard of a indexed peer-reviewed journal here. So that's probably one solution. But yes, we also have a section in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology which we have introduced with our term as published thesis work. We know that a lot of thesis work does get best paper awards here, but it's not mandatory when it translates into good research writing that it's worthy of being considered for a peer-reviewed index journal because of certain methodology flaws or certain limiting factors, because of the time frame which is limited for thesis students here. That is largely the limiting factor, and in such cases then if it does strike and reach the publication in IGO, then we do have a special section for the best published thesis work in IGO as well, which would probably also get an award constituted for the next year. So I'll just quickly talk to you on editorial strategies for a successful journal. I think these strategies keep evolving with time, keep evolving with the kind of manuscripts we are seeing, and with the quality and the standard of research writing which we are looking at, which is sitting on the desk of every editor or the editorial board here. So to make it a definition, it's probably the way we would plan to guide the content creation, the curation of the content, and the distribution of the content over the issues which we probably want to assign them to, and in the process ensure consistency and alignment with the organizational objectives. The organizational objectives, primarily the journal is affiliated with a parent society such as ours, which is affiliated with the AIOS, or largely now there is a shift in ophthalmic publishing or publishing, medical publishing literature, where it is shifting with the publishing firms here. So probably as editors we are then probably confined to limiting ourselves or aligning ourselves with the organizational objectives to define the goals and the target audiences and the themes for the work we are doing in. So to break it down, to make it more easy in understanding, it's that we need to work on creating a content. We ensure that there is consistency in these contents which are being distributed across the journal issues and the volumes, and we align the objectives and define the goals and our target audience here. So let's probably take it point-wise here in 6 points to strategize. The first one is you will probably define your target audience here. So that's what probably most of the high-ranking journals in ophthalmic publishing are doing, that they have journals which I think we all touched upon in the earlier discussions. They either cater to translational research, they either cater to clinical research here, or they particularly have experimental research. So I think defining the target audience of your particular journal. And that's when authors also need to know that what is the audience which is being targeted by this particular journal, so that they know to choose the right kind of journal for submitting their work here. Second editorial strategy, which probably would be of help if you want to understand it, is what create a reason for the statement of your content here. So why exactly would you need to have this content in your, or you justify the reason for this particular content featuring in your particular journal here, and is that probably going to enhance your impact factor, your citation index, or your site score? So that's the second one which you would probably look at here. The third is, as a team, when we sit out and when we talk and we see how can we enhance the performance of our journal here, is to brainstorm on those particular topics which need to be probably discussed more, or those topics which feature as hot topics. And probably if you can have your editorial team and you can have your have the reviews come in which are probably working towards these particular objectives of brainstorming your topics and strategies here. The four would be know the particular content and quality and the standard of what you are publishing here. Do not compromise this, come what may, and this is probably very important in understanding that to keep your journal moving. I think the challenge which I face is IGO is still a Q2 content vis-a-vis. You look at AGO and BGO is a Q1 journal here. So moving IGO from Q2 to Q1 will need those submissions and the quality contents to be more higher, or move much higher than what we are particularly looking at right now here. And step 5 is to understand what are the performance measures which really sort of gauge you or measure you in the field of ophthalmic publishing. Yes, these by and large can have a few biases, are defined by particular organizations here, but they do probably are the only metrics which we have to assess and to think about how we can improve our performances and on the weaknesses which we can work on as a particular journal, and as how our editorial strategies can probably cater to going around these particular weaknesses and modifying them. And I think the last but not the least, as we do in every field, always watch our peers. So I think IGO is still not up there. We are probably, we broke beyond the 3, but consistently keeping beyond the 3 is a challenge which we are facing, because the COVID advantage, which boosted the advantage of which boosted the numbers for almost all journals in publishing, is something which we don't have right now. India had a huge advantage because it was a big country. It was publishing a lot of material which was teaching the world on their experiences using COVID, but that helped to contribute and increase our impact factor. But we are, I think, world over among all publications seeing our impact factors drop, because this is something which we have lost. So we are watching our peers, and we are also watching our performance when it falls in tandem with the performance of the others. So in a nutshell, I think when we look at ophthalmic publishing and we look at editorial strategies, I think my peers here as chief editors of AGO and BGO probably do not face the pressure of which I face as an editor of Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. The question always asked is your impact factor better than what your prior team looked at? And we all know that my team's impact factor is probably going to come in only over the next couple of years, and the impact factor which is now still showing talks about the publications which were there in the previous 2 to 3 years here. So we need to evolve our strategies to improve our, to target our audience and get them to cite more of our work here, and that would probably only happen if the content of what we are publishing is of high quality and is at par with those of the Q1 journals here. So this is a continual job for our editorial board and reviewers to really look at the content calibration and also optimize the performance of our articles here. A few strategies which we have adopted is to bring out themed issues here. So we do have a lot of themed issues which are of particular interest to India, largely being a country which are more of clinicians and less of those with academic publishing here. So we try to cater and push those with themed issues, like we do have issues on catering to intraocular lenses, issues on glaucoma, which cater to the glaucoma week every year, and we have issues on ocular surface here, so we probably try to also cater to the needs of the country and cater to the needs of our audience, so that we are discussing more of problems which are regional rather than global, and so that would probably increase the appeal factor of our journal here. We do have our have a sister journal here, which is the case report, which is not yet indexed here, but this is a huge resource material for all those who are in ophthalmic clinics, and I would welcome all of them to spend more time with this, because it's like a real fast case presentation, and there are so many formats in this particular case reports which I do particularly find would be good material for learning ophthalmology here. I thank you all for your patient listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vanity. I think it was a great talk. I have a question for all the three chief editors. We can start with probably Vanity. So what is the one big challenge that you face as an editor, and what is one thing that you want to do for your journal before you complete your term? So what's that one vision and one challenge for each of you?
I think in India, the way our journal is structured, that it's affiliated with the parent organization of All India Ophthalmological Society here, and we have this system of having to contest on the political arena. We have to fight elections to become the chief editor here. So it's not only our clinical acumen, it's not only our academic acumen here. Vis-a-vis, I know with journals which are run by leading publishing firms such as Springer's and Elsevier's, which I think chooses their team based on just their academic credit here, and their experience in publishing. So this is something which I would look forward needs to be changed, and this is imperative. So ours is aligned with LWW here, and Medno takes care of its the publishing business of our journal here. But it still is defined by the political circles here. And if we need our country's academic publishing needs to grow, not only to enhance Indian ophthalmology academics, then we need to probably do away with this here. And I think largely both Dr. Parish and Dr. Larkin would agree with me that now there is a turn where most of the publishing firms are moving towards owning the journals vis-a-vis the society affiliations here. So there is being a change where Elsevier brings in a lot of the journals under their portal, and they are now probably endeavoring to also define their team which works with the editorial business of their concerned journals here. So I do not know how much of this is going to influence the way we are publishing now, but I do understand that it's probably going to have an impact on the cost of publishing which is going to be there here. So IJO still does not have any article processing charges. It is a free to publish journal here, but we do have photo processing charges beyond which it is open access. But largely I think me along with my team, we still push for the quality of content rather than the quantity or the number of articles we are publishing. So it's a fine balance between both, and if this can happen for Indian publishing, ophthalmic publishing, that would be something which would be wonderful.
The answer to your question on what's the biggest difficulty at the moment, I would say for our journal, it's reviewers and getting good reviews. The good people are busy, and it's difficult to get good people to put time aside to do detailed reviews and critiques of papers. So I think that's the biggest problem we've had in recent years. I suspect it's generic to all of us. Your second question was what target we had. My own, it's to increase the international reach of my journal. So I'm here in India, and Dr. Parish is probably doing the same thing. And then I was in China last year twice, and we publish almost nothing from Africa, and I want to do something about that. So those are my two answers.
Yeah, I agree very much with with Dr. Larkin. The American Journal of Ophthalmology is not associated with any society, national, regional, subspecialty, and as such, I think gives us great freedom to publish the best science from wherever it comes in the world. Much has been made in the United States, unfortunately, of a notion of of equity, inclusion, and diversity. Well, I believe the American Journal of Ophthalmology achieves all of that, not as stated goals, but because we want to publish the best science that will have the greatest impact. And I think that's probably could be said for every journal, whether it's the Indian Journal, British Journal, Journal of Ophthalmology, or any others. But my goal would be, if you have a great publication and you're in Kuala Lumpur or Moscow or Montevideo, you would send it to us. In a sense, we're all after the very best science, and that's simply the nature of the competition that I think benefits everyone.
Thank you so much.
So, is there any questions for Dr. Parish? Yes, please do come over to your mics and introduce yourselves, please. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Actually, the discussion is going on at a very high level as far as I am concerned. I just took up the post of editor of our Karnataka State Society, but I have some basic questions. It's not indexed as discussed by Dr. Vananthi. We have many students who want their articles, or even professors or lecturers who want their articles to be published. Now, how, I know this is not the right question to ask here, but as a beginner, as an editor, how should I get the journal moving ahead to get these articles published in our state journal and get it indexed? What is your guidance or a few tips? We all look up at Indian Journal.
Yeah.
As from the state.
Yes.
I'm sure many other state
Yes.
editors also
Yeah.
will be looking up at Indian Journal editor.
Yes, so I think I have been approached by a couple of the state journals which do, it became sort of a complaint that IGO takes in all the submissions and we have less submissions for our journal. So we are not able to make the number of issues which we require as defined by the journal. First as an editor is that you look at what is, how you are going to plan the number of issues. Depending upon the number of submissions, you will probably want to draw from your particular state. So if you are catering to Karnataka, so you would largely want to encourage those who are looking at their education needs in Karnataka. So you're going to look at the Karnataka institutions which are going to submit, and then you should have a strategy to see how am I going to attract these submissions, and what are the number of submissions is going to come to me, what is going to be the quality of these submissions, and do I have a team which is capable of reviewing these and probably making this flawless. So here as a non-index journal, you do not face the pressure of having to look at the novelty. You don't have to have, you're looking at it, it's going to change somebody's practice patterns. Is there something? So you're probably looking at some good research which was done ethically according to the research requirements. So this is something which you can look at, and your team of reviewers would probably help you to see that this is probably worthy of a publication which is looking at all the, whether it's fulfilling all the requirements of a research ethics, of research requirements, research consents, the methodology, the way it is presented. So it's a way of how you're teaching your ophthalmology residents to learn. So if your journal can achieve that, see, again, it need not be you have to bring it out as a monthly journal. You have to bring out 4 issues, 5 issues, 6 issues. You can even bring out just 2 issues, but you have to see that it has a consistent pattern. If you are defining that this is going to feature reviews, it's going to feature brief reports, it's going to feature original articles, you have to define what is going to be the minimal number, and that has to be consistently coming out over the next 2 or 3 years before you're looking forward to move it to the next level or the next step.
Are these guidelines anywhere reachable for us?
I think yes, these are available. These are guidelines if you're looking at indexing a particular journal here. But before indexing, you need the peer review process to be there for scrutiny. So which means you need an online procedural protocol which is put online so that when the scrutinizing organization or the scrutinizing agency is looking at indexing, they are probably going to look at how your peer review is being done.
Okay, thank you so much.
It's an excellent session. I'm Sanjay from Singapore. So we have heard about both author perspective and the editorial perspective. As a reviewer, I do get about 3 to 5 reviews every week. So how do I actually decide which paper to take, looking at the abstract? And we are also pressed for time. So it's not ideal always to actually reject papers. So how do you decide? That's my first question.
Are you on an editorial board, or are you?
No, I'm just a reviewer, a peer reviewer. So I actually last week I got one from AJO, Ocular Immunology, IJO. So I find these papers interesting. So how do I actually decide? Okay, because you can't be doing, and the other grouse probably what I have is each one has a reminder, submit within 14 days, submit within 3 weeks. So all these things actually is a bit of a pressure to actually submit the review.
Well, I don't think any of us can tell you how to prioritize your own time. And as a reviewer, what I think would drive your decision more than anything else is personal interest in the work. As a more junior ophthalmologist, I did a lot of reviewing. I enjoyed it, and I thought it was a privilege. And that's why I ended up getting interested in becoming an editor later in my life. And very few of my colleagues enjoyed doing reviewing, but I found it interesting. And I learned a lot reviewing. I learned how papers can be bad, how they can be good, and it's good for you. So I would think your own week-to-week decision-making is entirely your business. But I would select the papers that interest you most. And the timings and the constraints that are imposed by the journals, I'm afraid that's life. And journals are doing that as a service to authors. We want quick turnaround because authors expect quick turnaround, and it's a courtesy. But that's why I said it's difficult to get reviewers. We're all busy. We all have patients waiting to see us. We have students waiting to see us. We've got lots of callers in our time, and it's tough. But thank you for all you do.
Thank you. There's one more thing. Previously, we had access both to AJO and BJO as a member of All India Ophthalmology Society. Now, this privilege has been withdrawn. So this reach, what you are talking about, actually limits the reach of many of our students and mentors and all, because people have to go to the Pirate Hub to actually download your articles, which is actually not great. So probably you need to look at it, and subscription only for developing countries probably is not an ideal model. So what are your thoughts?
See, earlier the AIOS portal was offering the subscription for all journals through, but I think there is a one-line network now. I think there is a one-line through which you could probably access most of the journals here. And I think AIOS is now working on getting this back on. The academy had given them an access to all of the articles here. That probably was withdrawn over the last year, and I think they're working on re-establishing it here. And yes, BGO does come free to all the developing nations, but even that is restricted now, as I believe so. You know, so there is. I think there is a catch to everything that now, see, the publishing business also needs its financial support. And largely for IJO, it's the onus is on me to generate the revenues for supporting the publishing business here. Vis-a-vis for many of them, the societies support them totally, but for IGO, AIOS supports us about with 20% of the costing which comes for the publishing business and to the publishing costs. And beside the publishing costs, I also have to take on the pressure of providing free copies to a large amount of the readers as well here. So that's something which they demand by right in India, which is not so in UK or USA. So these are pressures which we feel. And so I think most of those journals are not open access or are only available on subscription, because the subscription is what pays to cover the costs of the publishing. So that defines the thing, and this is something beyond our particular control, and that lies with the publishing firms and the managing societies to redefine this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As we're talking about, sorry, I'm Dr. Jagrati Jadeja, I'm Professor of Ophthalmology in the West Zone Regional Institute of Ophthalmology. As we're talking about the postgraduate studies and converting them into publications, we usually ask our residents to go through the basic course in biomedical research videos, which are like available, and it's mandatory for them to actually appear for the exams also. So there's a set of about around 30 videos, which are like less than half an hour or something, which give them the basic information. I mean, if journals could come up with something like this, which would guide them further with more quality or more information in a more that level of understanding, having some online platform, a course which they can do, all the students like
I've been working with LWW and MedNow to address this towards the Indian authors' needs here, but I believe Elseviers and Springers have their own portals and they have their programs which does run a course on enhancing the publishing experiences or the knowledge resources which are required for authors, which is available even online in their respective portals. You can explore those. And Dr. Parish, you had wanted to say something earlier.
The members of the American Academy of Ophthalmology, and some of you may have international membership with that, do have access to Survey of Ophthalmology, all of the journals associated with that, Ophthalmology Retina, Ophthalmology Glaucoma, Ophthalmology Science, and the AJO. So if you are you have membership in the American Academy of Ophthalmology, you do have access to AJO, which is not available, I understand, to nations such as India or China that obviously are not developed, are well-developed nations.
Yes, so like in that context, if there's something, a small program which is put up online, which can be accessed by residents through the quality of research, the postgraduate level of maybe bigger journals can also have their platforms which are just helping them better their research work. Maybe if you can take that up in future.
They are already existing. The only thing is the students should know. Probably I will take out something in which they need to know. I will add that on as resource materials which they can access free online. It is available in almost all the publishing portals. If they go in and look at their instructions to the authors, they are, and there are courses which are regularly run as well. They come in on batches here. And I'm trying to get these organized by LWW for our Indian things, and we'll work on this further.
And once you do that, if you can make its appearance a lot, like we get emails almost every day about an IJO webinar and a webinar by the ARC and all that. So a research-based platform.
Yes, I understand. IGO does not do webinars because, yes, I just have done one over the last year. So I don't believe in doing webinars. And the problem with this is the audience availability to enhance the interest taken by those who are conducting research methodology workshops is less than optimal. So, so we are probably working on this. We are having one national methodology workshop which is going to come up shortly in the next 6 months, which will be hosted in Delhi. It will probably be at the AIOS headquarters. I will send you information on that once it is completely lined up. And Dr. Larkin, you wanted to add something to it?
Just an observation that there's tremendous interest among ophthalmologists, and this probably goes across hospital medicine, in how to publish a paper, mistakes to avoid, a didactic type material. And I know this only from personal experience, being asked to speak at national ophthalmology meetings on a panel dealing with this kind of material. So there's great appetite internationally for what you describe in various formats. But the room is always full to capacity when I've spoken at these events.
Meetings.
Even if Dr. Manati says the takers for such meetings are
Are
very
much
few.
lesser. I think we'll have to close now.
Sure,
There is
thank
a
you.
YOC webinar which is available. All the YOC webinars, IGO does one with the Young Ophthalmology Society of India, and you could probably access them. They particularly cater to research-related topics. I think we'll close here, and my heartfelt thanks to both Dr. Richard Parrish and Dr. Frank Larkin, and Shweta, Vinay, and Rohan, and Dr. Radhika as well, who were here, and we had a wonderful session for enriching our experiences and learning from your knowledge and experience as well. Thank you so much. A quick photograph, please.